Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Michael's Record Collection, where we talk about great music with the people who make it and the people who love it. I'm very excited to be joined by one of the members of IZZ, Tom Galgano. You've got a new solo album that I can't wait to talk to you about. Tom, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm really excited to be here.
So, before we get into the solo album, which I've been really enjoying, Sleepwalking in a Strange Land, let's start with your backstory, your origin story, if you will. Um, what was your first favorite record, Tom?
It was definitely the Beatles, and so anything by the Beatles. My mother was the second oldest of seven, so my uncles and aunts were teenagers when I was 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, and they gave me, if I remember correctly, well, I don't really remember. I just remember having them, a lot of their Beatle albums, which they allowed me to play and scratch and destroy, unknowingly. But yeah, any Beatle album. I was a huge Beatle fan.
What what was the first thing you picked up instrument wise? What was the first musical thing that you decided I'd like to try that?
It was the guitar.
Yeah.
And then my first memory is um, so my father, who doesn't have a musical bone in his body, um, when I was when I was maybe 2.5 or 3, and the reason I know that is because we have the receipt. He, without telling my mother, bought her an upright piano in our little condominium apartment, and it was being delivered, and I can remember it being delivered, and my mother saying, "Oh, that's you have the wrong house." And so I remember a piano being delivered, and then I also remember as my mom would try and play it, me as a 2, 3, 4 year old would always push her off or sit with her. Um, so piano didn't overtake. It was piano and guitar, saxophone starting in third or fourth grade. So those were my three instruments, and I always loved to just pick up drumsticks and play on the floor. I never had a drum set, but I had blue drumsticks, and I would play away on the rug.
Oh, well, that's probably better for your parents anyway.
Yeah.
I I'm just amazed that you and your brother, very talented musicians, growing up in the same house. Were you at odds musically ever, or did you always sort of gel together when you were doing music?
Well, I think we had like the brotherly regular, like you live in the same house, you're not going to have exactly the same ideas. When I was like in like seventh and eighth grade, I'm 5 years older than he is, so I was always trying to make collections of recordings. Like it was just something that's like built into me.
Mhm.
So I was trying to make a collection of recordings, like an album, when I was in, I don't know, seventh or eighth grade. So John, being like in second grade, being 6 or 7, I needed someone to play. What instrument was it? A tambourine. I needed him to just play on 2 and 4 on this little ditty that I wrote on guitar. And he fought me on it. He did not want to do it with me. Finally, I got him to do it, and it was going great. But then all of a sudden, the 2 and 4 changed to the 1 and 3, and I couldn't get him to do it again. So that's what's on my little recording of him messing up the groove.
You
But
still have it?
somewhere I haven't heard it in a long time, but I do have it. Um, so I mean, we've argued over music in the past, like in is like what the direction a song should go, or if a song, yeah, the direction a song should go. But that rarely happens now in the last 10 or 15 years. It would happen often enough in the earlier days, like especially around I Move era. Um, there was a lot of headbutting. I wouldn't say a lot, but there was a healthy amount of headbutting. And I remember watching the Yes Years video and Trevor Rabin saying something like, "There's there." What was the phrase? Uh, there's the wrong way and there's your way. I'm not saying that right. In other words, the way you think is always the right way.
Mhm.
I think he was referring to like little issues he had with John Anderson on some songs. So I've let go of that because it always ends up being what it's meant to be. And I was much more prideful and hard headed 15 years ago. Um, I'm much more willing to let go unless I know you have it, you just know that what you have is right. But that is rare.
Yeah.
I usually let it go, and if it's meant to come back, it comes back.
Okay. Well, I think you've matured over the years then. It's a sign of maturity. A little compromise, but it is what it is. You guys have certainly had a lot of, you know, fantastic music that you've put out. You've been working together a long time now, but I'm sure it wasn't always that way. When you joined your first band, was that your band and John was a little younger than you?
Yeah, I kind of swore I would never be in a band, because I was like a studio rat,
Mm-hmm.
in high school and college, and that's what I love doing. I love to create and record. And I met, well, John and I were constantly just naturally interacting musically with each other. And then in college, I met Greg, and through Greg, I met Brian and Brems, and they played on some of my um, pieces of music that I wrote. Um, that that I was like, I was a, how do I explain it? Like it was an assignment. I had to write a piece of music, and then we had to perform it. So Greg was in the school, and once I heard him play drums, I was floored. And then brought me to see Brems playing with his band, who was called Schrodinger's Cat, and I was floored at his playing, and Brian likewise. And anyway, it was just one band. Is That's it.
Yeah. And then, eventually you were all together and you're the band that we know now. Now, when you guys you mentioned I Move, fantastic record, probably still my favorite as a record, although they all have their own charms and their own high points, but you recently got to take that album on the road a little bit for your anniversary. How did that go for the album's anniversary?
I thought it went great. I mean, some of the songs, like a song called Night of Nights, we'd rarely ever performed live for whatever reason. I don't know why. But that was great, and it got great reaction. And it, for lack of a better adjective, it was fun. Um, Song like I Want to Win took on a whole new personality. That was also something. So again, in the early days, and still I have to fight this, is I feel like it has to always be just as it is on the record. And it's not always true, because sometimes things work better in a live situation played differently. So I Want to Win doesn't, when we do that live now, it doesn't sound really like the record, because it was all based on a drum machine groove. Um, and it's much more organic now when we play it. So it was great. It was a lot of fun.
Good, glad. So we're gonna fast forward to your solo album. You hadn't done a solo album before, and honestly, is the members of Is, other than maybe Brems, there's not a ton of solo stuff out from you guys. When did you? This was put together, stuff you wrote over a long period of time, right?
Yes.
What was the earliest piece, or do you remember the earliest piece that you had that made it onto this record?
I don't remember the exact year, but it was around 2003 that my wife Anne Marie bought me like my first software synth. It was not awesome, but it had all those analog sounds that I didn't really have access to. And I was also at the same time really delving into, um, well, I was getting a master's degree at SUNY Purchase College, and all my professors were only about avant-garde. I couldn't go into another class that didn't they weren't touting how amazing avant-garde music, and we had to study it, and we had to present it, we had to write it. So this was in my head. So all those little most of those little preludes, those minute-long preludes, that was basically me just messing around with the time period I was in school. And I was just trying to do something different for fun. And I really never thought it would be a part of anything I put out. But I always kept listening every 3 or 4 years. I'd listen to it. I'm like, oh, I got to do something with this. I got to do something with this. So those are the earliest. So that would be, I think it's called Take Every Thought Captive, and It's Not a Table. And then Love and There Will Be Love. Those were all just me experimenting with this software synth, having a ton of fun. And all those sounds now I've replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And I replayed some of the stuff over again. But those were 75% done in 2003. Besides the drums and bass weren't there.
Now you decided you did all this stuff yourself, like all the instruments, everything we hear is you pretty much.
Yes.
That's this is a true solo album. Was there ever a time when you thought maybe I should bring in somebody else, or was it always the plan with you? You were always going to just do
Well,
everything yourself.
it really wasn't a plan
Okay.
because so I after whenever we release an Is album, there's always a certain time period because Michael, like I spend so much time on those 8 songs or on that 45 minutes of music, not 1 year, but when all's said and done, like 2 to 3 years of recording and massaging these parts and getting the right drum sounds and blah 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 blah. So I'm sick of the music, like totally sick of the music by the time it's done. So I just had to release doing something different. And there was one particular day in 2022 where I said, I'm going to put down the skeleton to a bunch of songs through the course of this morning. I had the morning and I put, I just put the skeleton down, piano only. I had no melodies, no lyrics, no like vision at all to 4 of the songs that are on the album. So that would be Lens of Suspicion, When Are You Coming Down Again, Let Poetry Do What Poetry Does, and the other one. I can't remember the other one. But anyway, 4 of those songs were, oh yeah, Carried Away. Those 4 songs over the course of 2.5 hours were just laid out, but they had, again, no melodies, no lyrics. And then I listened to them a lot in the car, still had no ideas for melodies or lyrics, but got to know the form of these chord progressions and sections that I had done. And I'm not a drummer, or I'm not a good drummer, I'm not a professional drummer, but I love to play drums. And the drums were set up. And one day I said, I'm going to put the drums down to these for fun. And then when it sounded okay, I was like, oh, it's not Is anymore because we have 2 drummers. Like it didn't make any sense. So for a long time, I kind of pushed these songs away. Um, I kept saying to John, I have these songs. Maybe we should do an ampersand volume 3 and just it's okay that it's just me because it's like, and we have this and we have that. But John felt strongly that it shouldn't be an Is, and obviously it really shouldn't be Is. So that's why it's Tom. That's why I didn't have a plan to do a solo album.
Hmm. Okay. Now, do you have your own drum set, or did you have to borrow one?
We had like a band drum set,
Okay.
which was in my studio, pretty much always set up and mic'd up, ready to go. Um, so yeah, it's actually Greg's original Is drum set, but he doesn't use that one live, but we use it in the studio.
Well, it's very handy to have that around then for you. So, you've already answered one of my questions. I was going to ask you about the preludes, and when you were structuring the album, decided to put a solo album out. Was it always the case that you were just going to use these as sort of, I don't know, not exactly palate cleansers, but just sort of something to catch your breath between songs or something?
There wasn't a big plan. I as I would work on them, I'd say, "Oh, that's good. Got to use that. Oh, don't know how I'm going to use that or where it's going to go." And songs that are a minute or a minute and a half long, that happens a lot on like classical albums, right? Um, but those kind of songs, like in our genre, they kind of get lost. So I wanted to make sure that the audience knew that this was a complete idea. Like this was meant to be this short,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Um, so by so then what I did was I had these more full songs, and in my head I was saying, okay, so which one of these would complement the bigger song, so that it's becoming a work of art rather than just here are all these songs. So I did make it work, whether it was the key was similar or a note in a chord matched, and then there was the segueing and yada yada yada. So there came a point, I don't know, maybe 8 months ago where I said, I'm going to call these preludes.
Except the last one is a postlude and it's a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. So when you write, do you start with the keyboard or guitar, or does it vary?
It totally, I'm sorry, like, I can't be like, it varies. I'd
Mhm.
like to say it's one way or not, to answer your question more directly, but it's completely different every single time. That song that opens the album after the first prelude, a riddle song, I picked up my electric guitar, which I rarely pick up because we got Brems. So why would I be picking up my guitar? And it sounded so good. I was like, oh my gosh, why does it sound so good? I don't know why it sounds good. And I just said, I pressed record. And I literally laid out the whole riddle song just by plucking individual notes, not having any kind of plan. I had no idea. I was also in a phase there with riddle song where I was looking at a lot of um, what's it called, public domain poetry, because the hardest thing for me to do when composing is write lyrics. And I remember like Brian had the lyrics for Weak Little Lad, and that just came right out of me. Like, because if I could sing it, if I have the lyrics in front of me, the melody's going to pop out like real fast. Same thing with from the last album. Um, no, he wrote the melody for There's Hope. Oh, for the song Razor from our first album. The lyrics were there. It was pretty easy for me to write the song based on it. So I'm getting away from your question. I apologize. But so a riddle song was guitar. Those four other songs that I was talking about were all piano based. So yes, it's mostly piano. It's mostly piano. Um, and I have been writing the last 3 or 4 or 5 years like poetry. And out of the poetry have come a lot of the most recent lyrics. So I did have a lot of these words, in my book, my scribble book, you know.
That's good. No, you don't ever have to apologize. I'm trying to figure out your process. You might not even know your process some of the time. So this is all good information. I'm happy to get into that. So that was another one of my questions was what is your approach to lyric writing? But you've already answered it. You sort of kind of come up with those separately, and then when you're when you're reading them, do you hear do you hear a sound in your head, or do you pluck away until you find something that you like?
Well, I used to force myself to write, and now I almost never force myself to write. Um, Now I did with those four songs in December of 2022 when I was, but I was just having a good time. Like it wasn't like, oh, I have to go do this. So I would say in the earlier days of is the music for me, if I'm writing a song on my own, the music always came first. And I might have a chorus or I might have some words, and then the lyrics would come later. And I always feel like the lyrics are more forced that way because I'm trying to, and then not that it can't turn out good, it could turn out great that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's nice to have a bunch of lyrics like ready to go. Um, you know, and that's the way it's been, I would say 75% of the time with me in the last 6 or 7, 5, 6 years, 5, 6 years. When I'm the lyric writer, we have a lot of guys in the band who write lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think the one thing I'm curious about that maybe we need to touch deeper on is when you're writing music, do you hear that song in your head? Do you hear those sounds in your head and emulate them, or do you pluck away until you find something you like that sounds good to you?
So sometimes it's that way where
Mm-hmm.
I have it, like I keep having it in my head over and over again. I don't know if you can recall the last part of the Darkened Room, the last song. No, da 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 da
Oh yeah.
da 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 da. I'd rather be lost than locked outside. I was driving somewhere and I couldn't get that out of my head. So that's an occasion that it was in my head and then I found chords to fit with it. So
Mm-hmm.
it happens that way sometimes. That's not the only song that's happened with. Um, a lot of times it's just something on the piano that I come up with, and I'll just start singing and improvising words. Um, And a lot of the time, those words don't stick, but they're a beginning of something. It's hard to answer this, Michael, because it honestly is different every single time.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is me saying that doesn't work. Well, the whole like trying things out until it works, that happens all the time in the middle of a song. All right. When I'm in the middle of a song, that's when the trial and error comes. Um, but it almost never starts that way. It always is organic, and I feel like it's forgive me for my lack of words here. I feel like it's like the Holy Spirit. I feel like inspiration that, and I'm not trying to make it something bigger than it is,
Mm-hmm.
but I do feel like a lot of it is just inspiration.
Okay.
Or sometimes, I turn my keyboard on and I play a chord, and for some reason it sounds so great, and I have to continue with that chord. You know. Anyway,
No, it's good. A lot of
not a great answer.
I've talked to other musicians who have kind of touched on similar experiences. The reason I asked that question is the song "When Are You Coming Down Again?" You've got this fantastic sort of overlapping chorus vocals, and I was wondering, do you start with one and then you think, well, this needs something else, and you add to it, or do you always know that that's going to be going on in the background?
I don't know anything, Mike. This is why I'm a studio rat, and I love to create because I don't know what's going to happen next. It's you get to create the song that you want to hear. Like that is the coolest thing. So again, I that day, December 22, for 3 hours at the piano, when I got to that song, I cannot recall playing what I played. I just and I didn't overthink it. I just said I'm going to play something. Oh, it's this. Okay, blah, 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 and play that section. Stop the recording. Say, okay, what would come next? And I would like improvise something and say, oh, that's it. Um, all that overlapping lyrics and vocals. That was after. I didn't know what the vocal melody would be. There was that one note in that song. Um, what's the melody? It's a one note melody that happens over and over again. I want to walk in the da, 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 da. Well, that's the piano note that's there. So when I played that part on piano, I didn't think it would be a vocal melody. Um,
Okay.
but just through experimentation.
Yeah. Now, your brother has said that over the years you've been, I mean, and you've a little bit touched on this, that you have become through just repetition and learning and the desire to do it, have become this really good producer. Is that sort of how you construct things? You have pieces, you put them together, and then as you're writing, maybe you put something aside and you go to a different song and you work on that for a bit, and then it just kind of comes together that way. Or do you finish a song and then you know do whatever you need to do at the end to produce it, the final product?
I, I I don't ever finish it all at once. I'm working on multiple songs at the same time, which totally keeps things very fresh. We're working on something right now that I don't even remember what I did last time. I haven't heard it in a week, but I can't wait to go back and listen to what I did because I remember loving it. So yeah, there's multiple songs happening. Um, that keeps it fresh. Also, when mixing a song, also obviously I might be like at the end, you're focused on one at the very end, or maybe two or three at the same time. And my process, which I think is a lot of producers' process, is you do it in the studio and then you take it in the car, the car test. I've been doing that. I'm putting on a cassette tape, then wasting a CD. Back in the 2010s or the early 2000s, having a song, putting on a CD, listening to it, and it's not right, and you throw the CD out because the CD's done. You know, um, now it's a lot easier because you can email it to yourself, and you're not wasting a lot of money on blank CDs. But
Yeah, you
forget
mentioned you mentioned the concept of writing the song that you want to hear or playing the song you want to hear. And you guys have become, known for your brand of progressive rock. When did progressive rock enter your life, and what spoke to you about it?
Well, again, I had teenage uncles and aunts who listened to a lot of different music. Um, and my Uncle John bought me Close to the Edge on my fourth birthday. I remember him just giving it to me. And as far as I can get with that song, I remember putting the needle on and listening to the Birds at the beginning. And then the song would start, and that didn't float my boat. But I went back to the Birds over and over and over again. Um, a particular day, I don't know, I must have been like 11 years old, and um, I discovered the rest of the album of Close to the Edge, and I was like, this. I can remember like thinking, this is amazing. Rush, even though I'm not a huge Rush fan, there was a Rush phase where I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Um, so prog rock, just it was always there, Michael. It went from the Beatles, I mean, Billy Joel, when I was really young, like Foreigner. Um, but Emerson, Lake and Palmer was being played in my grandmother's basement, at very loud decibels. Um, and I loved it. There wasn't a time that I didn't like it. So as a 7, 8 year old, I was listening to all that stuff.
Was there a classical music period in your life as well?
In college, and this is such a cop out, but it's the truth. Like, so I'm not really a classical piano player. I became a classical piano player in college, um, but I wanted to learn Emerson, Lake and Palmer in high school, and my music teacher was nice enough to help me with that. So Emerson, Lake and Palmer was my classical music when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and then I transferred that to, you know, when I went to college. So I discovered classical music in college, and jazz. Um, but really, ELP's pictures at an exhibition, I didn't know was classical music until like high school. I was like, what? You just don't know because there's no internet, and you open up the album and I'm like, who's Mussorgsky? I don't know who this guy is. Well, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I grew up on Looney Tunes, not even knowing that I was listening to classical music.
Me too. Exactly. So that also, my mother will always say, I learned classical music from Looney Tunes. Me too.
uh, you, it's interesting you bring up ELP. There are some songs or some moments in these songs that you hear that influence. There's nothing overtly cribbed from ELP, but there are moments where you go, wow, that sounds a lot like ELP. There's something that they would play. Um, are you cognizant of your influences when you're creating new music?
Yes. And I used to really shy away from it. Like, oh my gosh, this sounds too much like this. There's too much like that. But again, I'm writing music that I want to hear. Of course, I don't want to copy, right? No one wants to copy. But I love those sounds. I would, as a high schooler, I'm salivating over the Moog synthesizer. I can't have it. It doesn't exist. It's not in the stores. I can't find one. I'm listening to these sounds, and I'm blown away by that. So now that I have it at my fingertips, why would I not use these sounds that I love so much?
Yeah.
And the sweeping portamentos, and I want to hear that. So I'm gonna write that.
Um, I want to get a little bit more into the album. The Riddle song comes in with this fantastic sort of bluesy opening riff. What inspired that, or do you remember the moment that you came up with that?
Well, I do. It was that time that I picked up my guitar for the first time in many
Okay.
years, and I said, I have to record. I don't know what I'm going to play, but it sounds really good. Um, and the only thing that existed on that song for a long time was a single note guitar line. So all the guitar that you hear throughout the song, which is kind of in and out, the parts that are out, I changed chords later. But so the inspiration was the sound. Whatever was coming through my speakers spoke to me, and I said I should press record and just. So I played that all in one take, not thinking it was going to be anything much of it, and it was just, again, I'm sorry, Michael, for keep repeating, but saying, okay, so that's kind of cool. What would sound good over that? And I don't know what came next, but again, it was in my phase of, looking up these poems that spoke to me, and that this poem by Walt Whitman called A Riddle Song really spoke to me, because it's a lot of the things that I um, wonder about in my own life. This, to me, I'm not 100% sure what Walt Whitman was thinking, but it sounds like he was thinking about what is behind everyone's actions, whether they know it or not. Is the quest for a higher power, is quest for God.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I chose those lyrics. Um, anyway,
Was there a conscious effort to not, or to try to not sound like is on this
no,
record?
no.
Okay. Because there are moments it doesn't sound like is in in some of the time, and some of the time it's like, wow, that could be on an is album. So it's definitely there. You definitely, an is fan will listen to this, and there'll be moments where they're like, oh wow, this is quite a different take from a member of is, and then the next minute they're like, oh, there it is. There's the keyboard solo or something comes in, and you're like, yeah, that's very Izzy. um, Speaking of the lyrics, and I was curious about the Lens of Suspicion lyrics. Was there a particular event that prompted the lyrics for that one?
I listen to a lot of Catholic radio, and there's this guy, Father Mike Schmitz. He's kind of like a famous Catholic priest guy, and I was listening to one of his homilies or talks or something, and he said sometimes we look at people through a lens of suspicion, like we're wary of them. We're wary of, how is this person going to hurt me, or maybe this person isn't going to like me. And I wrote it down in my phone right away in my notes. So I was like, lens of suspicion, that's good for something. Um, so that's not a personal story, although it could be, because I think a lot of us sometimes we look at others who we don't know with a lens of suspicion, with wary eyes, like, how can this person, is this person going to hurt me? Or I don't mean physically, but
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that was there is the end of that song was probably the first moment on the record where I said you can tell this is connected to the band is that last couple of minutes is really that big um is sound that you guys are so good at. One of the things I love about this album is the some of the song titles are terrific. You mentioned some of them already, but the one that really sticks out to me is let poetry do what poetry does. That's an interesting that's an interesting line. Did that come from somewhere, or did you just come up with that yourself?
I think I came up with it, and it's the whole idea of well, do you want me to tell you about it, like
Sure.
where it came from? And so I can't remember where it came from. I mean, I know that it's something that probably came out when I was singing, but the idea that um, poetry, good poetry, sometimes is all not that obvious right away the first time. And you could probably tell from a lot of his lyrics that there is a lot of higher power themes, searching for, is there a God? If there is a God, what does that mean? All that kind of thing. And I think in is, I like to not be so overt with the lyrics. Um, so that it could speak to everyone in whichever way it's meant to speak to them. But also, if I am wanting to be, um, have a certain message, um, being preachy is not a way to change people, at least for most people. They don't want to be preached at.
Mm-hmm.
So to be more poetic is the way I've always gone about it. But this particular subject that I had written a poem about, um, in it, I was saying, should I just say what I want to say here? Or should I shroud it in lots of different words and make it not clear? So halfway through the song, I say, forget it. I'm going to tell you what this is all, what the song is about, and be much more clear about it. Um, so that's probably the first, well, yeah, it's probably the first time that I'm very, very clear about my faith. And it's totally not meant to be preachy, and it's totally not meant to be like everyone has to think the way that I think. But it would, this was for me. This 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 was what I needed to write, and I felt like if I didn't write, I wouldn't be being true to myself, or true to God.
Mm.
If I kept trying to beat around the bush with it.
Yeah. Okay. Um, when Are You Coming Down Again is one of my favorites. It's got this terrific keyboard solo. It prompted me to write down the question, which you've already answered, about are you the kind of person who, or kind of musician who plays the solo like it's recorded, or you do it a little bit differently every night?
If I was to play it live,
Mm-hmm.
well, that particular solo, I think all the solos on this album sound like written solos to me, even if they were improvised. Um, so I'm much more, even with Is, I'm much more the kind of person is, it has to be played the way I played it on the record. Because see, the other thing, Michael, is I'm not an amazing live improviser. I can, but I'd rather show that an audience my best.
Mm.
So on one hand, what's on the record is best in my head. And be that if I went to the show, that's what I want to hear. However, I know that Brems, he has many solos that he never plays the same. And sometimes it kills me because I'm like, come on, just learn the solo, man. But then again, then all of a sudden he's playing it live. I'm like, oh, that was a better solo. Uh, so he has the ability to change it every night, and it keeps it fresh for him and fresh for us, because sometimes we don't know when he's going to end his solos, which we're on the tip of our toes. When are you done? But
Now, does he give you a cue?
yeah, he gives us the Brems look.
I'm about done. I'm all played out here.
There are sometimes there are guitar cues that he'll play at the end of every section.
Mm.
Um, Most of the time that happens, except on the song um, "Can't Feel the Earth 4." He has this like wild guitar solo, and I never know when he's going to end.
The song "Carried Away" has it contains the album title "Sleepwalking in a Strange Land." I love that turn of phrase. Is that from something, or did you come up with that?
I came up with that. Um, the idea that sometimes in our dreams we have these amazing, amazing dreams, um, and you wish you could stay there, and then you open your eyes and just, I guess, look at the news. So you're kind of living in two worlds, kind of. Um, so that's what that means to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, right, you kind of wish you could still be dreaming that dream, whatever it might be.
Oh yeah, I think that's something that's universal. I think everybody wakes up at some point and goes, "Man, would like to spend 5 more minutes where I just was."
Exactly.
Even if you don't really remember it when you wake up where you were.
Exactly.
That's great. Um, is this on your Dune Records?
It is.
It's a self-produced, self-released. Is the best place to get this on your Bandcamp?
Yep. That's the way that we make the most money, because just about all of it comes to the band, most of it. It's on Spotify right now. I'm not sure if it's on the other streaming platforms. I think it is. I know it's on Spotify. Um, and I think it's on Amazon. I'm not sure.
Fair enough. Are there any plans whatsoever to do a few live shows with this?
No. And I think the way these songs would see the light of day is if we have an is gig and there's one or two songs that we play. Um, I'm not saying no, that it would never happen for sure. but we're like right now we're in the middle. Well, first of all, we're in the middle of moving. Um, uh, I'm the studio I had to take apart, and I have to finish taking it apart tomorrow, which is a little sad, but we will rebuild. Um, but that won't stop me from setting up camp here where I am right now. For the next 2 or 3 months, set up like a makeshift studio, and we will continue to write, mix, record. John has a studio too. We're in the middle of the next IZZ album. We're about halfway, well, not quite halfway through, but maybe 40% through.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
So I forgot what the question was at this. Oh, if we were ever going to play it live.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, there's no plans right now. Yeah.
Okay. Question I wanted to ask you is, when a lot of musicians say a song is never finished, and I think that that's true with almost, as a writer, I know that's true with almost anything in the world of art. It's never really truly finished. There's always something more you could do to something. But when is the point where you're okay with letting a song go?
When it, I just when it's right, when I listen to it and I say nothing else is needed, and I do think there is a point where a song can be finished. Like I don't subscribe to that.
Okay.
I am a perfectionist, so again, I have matured in letting go a bit more. Um, I want to keep working till it's right, but when it's right, you just kind of know it, or I just kind of know it. Um, and then there's so much more to start, and new songs to do. Again, that's the exciting part of it. I'm so lucky, I'm so blessed that I have this, you can call it a hobby or whatever it is, but the fact that I get to create music. I mean, John and I have always said that we would do it whether anyone listened to it or not, because it's just for some reason it's in our blood, it's in our veins that we have to create. But the fact that some people want to listen to it is even greater. um, but I do think a song could be finished. I mean, is Close to the Edge finished? Yes. Like that's an amazing piece of music. um,
It is. It is. Yeah, I know. I just know that there are some people who will just continue and continue, and they need a deadline. Some people just need a deadline so that they can bring the proceedings to a halt, because otherwise they'll fiddle with it. Maybe sometimes to the point of making it worse instead of better. But and I have done that with short stories personally. I have worried and rewrote and tried to tried to make things better, and perfection is the enemy of good, I guess, as they say. But I think there are some people that feel that something's never quite finished. There's just a time when you need to get you just need to
well,
move on.
that is true. It is true. I, I think I've stopped trying to make things perfect. Um, and I feel like the album Crush of Night and even Everlasting Instant are I'm least happy with those two albums. Crush of Night is the only album that I did not finish mixing. I we had to hire someone to finish it because I was like pulling my hair out. I couldn't get it to sound the way I wanted it to sound. I was very upset. And then I recently listened to it like in the last week and a half, and I'm like, it's not that I couldn't get it to sound the way I wanted it to sound. The songs, a lot of the songs aren't right. Like there are problems with the songs, like to me, maybe not to someone else, but
Mhm.
when I listen to it, like Solid Ground, I wish I could redo the drums. I really love the song, but I didn't get a great drum sound. Brian and Greg played great. I didn't get a great drum sound. I listened to Words and Miracles, and oh my gosh, like the drums sound ridiculously amazing. Like why couldn't I make the solid drum sounds as good as that? And so I do think that, where I wish I can go back and change things. And I keep thinking to myself, I need to, the whole Crush of Night to This Reality and Crush of Night, those two songs that kind of go together. At some point, I do want to go back and shave some sections out, remix certain things. There is a tom tom that is so, the overtones, they kill me every time. Why didn't I notice it when it was happening? Um, so I guess songs, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they could never be done. I don't know.
That's interesting. You brought up drums because of one of that. I think that's how John and I got on the subject of you as a producer. Is I think it was for Collapse the Wave. I think when we were talking about that album, I think it was that I said how what I've noticed is that the drums sound better and better as his albums progress to the next album.
Well, thank you for that. And it is the thing that probably takes the most time in the recording process. Probably 30 to 45% of the time is me massaging the drums and getting the snare drum to sound the way I think it should sound. And sometimes I don't succeed, and I have to say, okay, it's good enough. Um, and other times we redo the drums. We've done that any number of times where I say to the guys, we have to do this again. Your performance is great, but I didn't capture it right, in the recording. Um, but I spend so much time on mixing drums, EQing drums, compressing drums. Um, that's what I would say is never finished. The drum sound.
Yeah. I have a theory that like all of the great albums throughout rock history, they all have fantastic sounding drums. And I can't think of a truly, I mean, I'm sure there are some, but off the top of my head, I can't think of a truly great album where I go, except the drums don't sound good.
Right. Right. I would say that's true 85% of the time. Um, it just for some reason it does affect the sound so tremendously because it's filling up so much space,
Mm,
the lows and the highs and everything.
yeah. And it can't be overwhelming. So there's
Right.
a
It can't be
balance.
overwhelming, but at the
Yeah.
same time, you want the power
Yeah.
or the finesse, whatever.
It's a tightrope. Do you have a favorite song on this album, Tom?
Um, the one that I listen to the most, well, it changes. It's silly for me to say. Lens of Suspicion, I really like. Um, and then I like Good Friend of Mine. Um, and then Let Poetry Do What Poetry Does. I'm very proud of that one. Um, and if I could just come back around to those lyrics, so Let Poetry Do What Poetry Does is meant to be kind of like surreal sometimes or cloudy. But then again, at the end of that song, um, as a Catholic, I believe in that, when the priest consecrates the bread and wine at a Catholic mass, that it truly does become the body and blood of Jesus Christ. For many reasons, which I'm not going to get into here. But it's almost like the poetry of God because I think at the end I say something like the manna that God gave Moses and the Jewish people, and the sacrificial unblemished lamb that was um, Passover at the Passover. Those things put together and come to fruition in what Jesus does at the Last Supper and what he does, on the cross. Sorry to be preachy. That's what the song's about, but not meant to be preachy. Sorry, um, but the poetry of God that the Old Testament and the New fit together so well, and that it's like poetry. Okay, that's that.
All right. Well, you're not being preachy because preachy is telling someone else what to think, not espousing your own beliefs. So I appreciate it, and whether someone agrees with you or not, you're certainly entitled to your beliefs and how you feel. I don't talk a lot about my faith, but I have my own beliefs. So we all have our stuff, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
And you never have to apologize for that. That's absolutely fine.
Thanks,
Uh,
Michael.
is there a way? Is there when somebody listens to this album start to finish, what do you want them to take away from that experience?
Well, this is a great question because, like, I want them to just, well, first of all, I'd love it if they listen from start to finish because I do feel like it is a complete thought, even though the songs were written all over the place. Some real new, some super old, some in the middle. I'm really proud of how it really does seem to fit together as a full and complete thought. So I would hope that listeners could listen to the 36 minutes of it and feel like they were on a little musical voyage. You know.
All right, fair enough. So the album is called Sleepwalking Through a Strange Land from Tom Galgano. It is available on your Bandcamp, obviously other places, but go buy it from the IZZ Bandcamp site. That's how you help the band the most. You're not real super active on social media, right?
Right.
So
Just through is,
yeah,
yeah.
so follow IZZ, especially on Facebook. It's a good place to go. And Tom, I've enjoyed listening to this album. I've enjoyed hearing your take on what it's about and the stories behind the songs and that kind of thing, and your background. I thank you so much for your time, and I wish you nothing but the best of success with this.
Michael, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.